So you were
Thank you.
you were the chair of the Indianapolis Suzuki Academy's board of
Yes.
directors, and also currently teach as professor at the University of Indianapolis.
Well,
So again,
not anymore. So I
oh,
no longer at UIndy,
oh,
but
okay,
now just privately now. But up
okay,
until 2 years ago at UIndy,
okay.
yeah.
So correction on that. This another three-parter. First, did you grow up with the Suzuki method, and also I'm curious as to what you find attractive about teaching and how your work as a teacher has helped you grow as a person and musician. So,
Sure. So, yes, I did grow up with the Suzuki method. I started with the Suzuki teacher when I was 4,
oh,
and I essentially studied with her up until I was 9 or 10, and then somehow made the jump from Suzuki to Hans Jensen, which
oh.
was fun. I studied with Hans for about 7 or 8 months, and he's an amazing teacher. I
Mhm.
just wasn't at the level to be prepared for that yet, because he was a very strict and very like he knew exactly what he wanted,
Yeah.
and I still didn't know how to practice.
Mhm.
And so, sorry, my dog's acting up again. But basically, yes. So I grew up with Suzuki. I think that one of the biggest things as a teacher is uh, preaching, doing what you say,
Yeah.
basically. So it's very easy. It kind of goes both ways, actually. So you have this idea that as a teacher, you sometimes when I first started teaching, I didn't exactly know how to approach it. I knew that, for example, like the phrasing wasn't quite right or the sound wasn't quite right, and so a lot of times I would feel myself like I would just play it through and be like, okay, what am I doing differently that this person is not doing? And then it forces you to break down what exactly you're doing, because a lot of times, for example, I've been playing for 20, 25 years now. You forget a lot of like the steps in between. You kind of go from A to double Z very quickly, and so so it kind of forces you to be like, oh, this is what I do with the bow. I think about this angle, whereas it's like just kind of you don't even think about that after a while. So it forces you to do that, so that if you encounter a similar problem during your own practice, you know how to troubleshoot it a lot better.
Right.
And so part of it's that. Part of it's also, like I said, the students force you to do what you actually teach as well. So
Right.
like if you say, oh, we need to be really clear with the left hand, and then demonstrating your left hand is as muddled as a 21-year-old on their birthday night, it's not going to be as good as it could be, kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas like if you had practiced that and you practice the A that you actually teach your students,
Yeah.
then when you demonstrate, it's like, oh, that's what it's supposed to sound like, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Because that's also, for example, like both Mr. Leonard and with Eric, it's kind of the
Mhm.
same thing where like when they demonstrate, it's like, ah, yeah, I have a
Yeah.
lot of work to do. So that's
Yeah.
my goal as a teacher, is to like uh, be the shining example, the knight on a white horse kind of
Yeah.
thing
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
my students in terms
Mhm.
of demonstration. So,
Mhm.
and that's also why I despise teach like I despise demonstrating excerpts. I love teaching excerpts, but I despise
Mm.
demonstrating them, because like I I feel like in order to be at my best, because like they'll sound fine,
Mhm.
but in order to like demonstrate like this is the level you need to be at,
Mhm.
like I actually have to be preparing for an audition myself. Otherwise, I'm not
Mm.
like kind of the similar question that you were asking before. Like
Mm.
I might practice one or two excerpts that I am not comfortable with, but
Mhm.
like I don't want to go anywhere near excerpts in terms of practicing them until I have to, because I
Yeah.
find that's the best way not to burn out on them, or still to keep it relatively interesting
Yeah.
and just kind of um, it's still exciting, basically.
Yeah.
So, let's see. What was the third part of the question? That was two.
Oh, your work as a teacher and how it helped you grow as a person and musician.
Yes. So basically that too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, it's just a matter of making sure that you approach it from an analytical perspective,
Yeah.
um, because then it makes you think about a lot of things. For example, I have a student who's doing Shostakovich Concerto right now,
Mhm.
and I'm playing Shostakovich Concerto right now, and
Right.
so it forces me to think about like the order of operations and making sure it's as clean and as musical as possible by
Mm.
breaking apart their Shostakovich concerto and also applying the same ideas to mine as well. So,
Mm. Yeah. Well, and I know also digging into your past a little bit
mm,
that I think pretty early in your tenure at IS with the ISO, you came to IU one semester as a guest
mm,
lecturer and taught the rep class there, right?
yes.
So I'm guessing you tried to avoid demonstrating as much as possible, or I don't know.
I mean, at that point I was still like actively like I was still trying to figure out. I only figured out like the separation between auditions and regular practice
Hmm.
after San Francisco. So I basically was still practicing regularly. So I was still having to demonstrate, and
Hmm.
I had a kind of two-tiered approach to that class where I'd have people individually play. I know. Sorry, I think my dog is hungry. But
No.
basically, I'd have them individually play, and then I'd have us play together as a group, and then I
Right.
demonstrate individual things that I wanted them to change, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas I know it kind of runs differently depending on each person, and
Yeah.
so a lot of it was, kind of approaching it more kind of cerebrally, like why are they asking for Beethoven 5? It's obviously for intonation, rhythm,
Hmm.
direction,
Hmm.
and elegance.
Hmm.
And so then we go through and we ask, is this good rhythm? Is this good elegance? Is this so and so? So a lot of it is just kind of breaking it down, and you don't have to necessarily demonstrate it. I'd be
Hmm.
happy to demonstrate, like, this is the reason, like, this is what we do to make it more elegant.
Hmm.
um, but yeah, no, it's it's something to the point where, like, I try to describe it first because I don't want anybody to go like, oh, it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It's like, yeah, because I'm not practicing extra for it now, basically.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's more for the protection of my own ego than anything else, I
Yeah,
think.
that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, and just kind of going back to Mr. Ron Leonard, because I know you mentioned before how you would
Mhm.
like your life to uh, emulate or kind of look like his.
Sure.
Is your in your dream scenario, is your
Mhm.
goal, are your goals more to play in a major orchestra as principal for while you're physically still in good condition, and then try to maybe go into teaching full time? Is that
Mhm.
kind of your goals and
Yes.
ambition? Yeah, yeah,
And I think it's one of those, kind of going back to, like, how I'm as a person. I'm very all or nothing,
yeah.
and so I feel like if I just retire and do nothing, I'm just like, I mean, not to be more of it, I'll just, like,
All right.
basically just wither away and die because, like,
Yeah.
I need something to, like, keep going. So in my mind, I mean, obviously, right now I still have my sights set on a Big Five orchestra job,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so up until, whenever the point is where I feel like, I think that the threshold for me would be when I feel like there's somebody up and coming who can do a better job consistently than I can. I think
Hmm.
that's the point when I would want to retire.
Hmm.
Um, and so, or like when I start to notice my playing starts to decline a little bit,
Sure.
whereas I feel like I always will want to teach, because even though, I mean, even like when I was injured and I couldn't really, play, I still felt like I had this, like, number of ideas that I wanted to try out, kind of thing, even though
Hmm.
I couldn't try out because I had a lot of tendonitis. Um, and so I guess my idea would be once it hits that point, then start teaching. That's also part of the reason why I ended up going back to IU for a master's degree, is because a lot of universities start requiring a secondary degree in order to
Right.
start teaching. I think it
Yeah.
used to be like bachelor's and equivalent experience or master's preferred. Now it's
Right.
doctorate preferred, master's
Yeah.
and equivalent
Exactly.
experience. And so,
Yeah.
so that's one of the main reasons, just because I don't want that to be a limitation, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it ended up having to do with just wanting to, um, I don't know, pass on the legacy of the amazing teachers that I've had, because
Hmm.
my even my Suzuki teacher was really fantastic and, like, got me started wanting to play the cello. My high school teacher made me want to actually, like, pursue this as a full-time thing.
Right.
And then my college teacher, both Mr. Leonard and Eric,
Hmm.
they both made me want to become the best principal that I can be and kind of shoot for the stars in terms of
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is like they have been so supportive and so helpful over my career
Yeah.
that I want to then turn around and return the favor to the next
Yeah.
generation as well. Speaking
Yeah.
of next generation, like, I have too many gray hairs. Um,
Yeah.
but when the time comes, like,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of more of a responsibility than anything, because
Yeah.
also, like, I feel like they're, for example, like with auditions, I feel like they're not very complicated.
Yeah.
But that's only because I've had Mr. Leonard and Eric
Mhm.
teach me how to do auditions, and
Right.
so now you can understand it. So then it's not that difficult to start to understand how to take auditions. It's just a matter of having that instruction in the first place.
Yeah. No, and just quickly, I know we didn't really get to talk about this, but
Oh,
I
sure.
think just the fact that you chose and decided to go back to school so well
Mhm.
into your career, I think speaks volumes of just your character and
Mhm.
your willingness and commitment to continue to get better. Because I feel like 99% of people in your position would have completely been fine with where you're at,
Mhm.
because you're obviously doing really well. And
Mhm.
like, and the fact that you were not to say that you had to, humble yourself or anything like that, but the fact that you
Mm,
still, because I mean, I'm sure it was definitely a change to go back to school
mhm.
when you've already
Yeah.
developed a professional life, and
Mm,
so I think that should that should speak volumes as to who you are as a person, and hopefully
mm,
serve as an encouragement to other musicians that you should
mhm.
never feel like you're content with where you're at in life. So yeah,
No.
thank you for showing
And
that. Yeah.
yeah, and honestly, it kind of goes back to what we were saying before about like the quote about like if you feel like you know everything, you know nothing kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like especially at IU, Eric was amazing at like treading that fine line. Like technically, I am a professional and I
Right.
have um, way more experience with the orchestral world than
Mhm.
everybody around me in the
Right.
studio.
Right.
And so a lot of it was, he would sometimes, if people are playing a mock, instead of him getting his opinion out first
Yeah.
about like this is what you need to do, he would defer
Yeah.
to me. He would encourage them to play for me as well.
Right. Right.
Whereas he understood because I made it clear when I first started studying for the masters that I
Mhm.
didn't want. I honestly would prefer to be much more incognito to the point where like there was a
Mm.
funny story about we were playing on Zoom for a sectional
Mhm.
and I remember like we had Professor De Pasquale, we had Georgia Flisandis,
Mhm.
and Alex Carr as our three kind of sectional coaches. And the way that they structured it during COVID was um, mainly grade levels in terms of
Mhm.
orchestra. So the only
Right.
time that I could do with my schedule was the freshman sophomore orchestra.
Right.
Then obviously they put me principal, and we were all masked up, so it was hard to
You're-
recognize people even that I had met before.
Right.
And so Alex, the way they did it, we were in a room,
Mhm.
all masked up distance, and then there was like one of those 360-degree Insta cameras that was linked up to Zoom, so Alex
Mhm.
could like see everybody and see
Right.
everything. And we
Right.
were playing Tchaikovsky Souvenir for String, or not, no,
Yeah.
Tchaikovsky Serenade,
Mhm.
and it was just not really holding together. I was trying my
Mhm.
best to like show the
Mhm.
beats to the concertmaster, where to
Mhm.
go, all that fun stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think Alex got a little bit annoyed at the lack of preparation from the orchestra,
Mhm.
and so he's just going on this tangent about like, why are we even doing this kind of thing? Then he paused and he looks down at the screen and he's like, Austin, it's good to see you. What are you doing here? And I was like, hi. Because we had worked together at mainly Mozart too,
Right.
which is a professional festival in San Diego for usually principals and other title players.
Right.
Um, and so we'd worked together professionally, and he just was like, maybe. So he turned to Concertmaster and was just like, hey, maybe follow him because he kind of knows what he's doing. Um, and she was like, oh. So that was kind of like what I was going for that before
Mhm.
Alex recognized me. That's what I was
Right.
going for, just like
Right.
subtly help where I can, but I
Yeah.
don't want people to be making a big deal of it while I was in school because
Yeah.
I wanted to be treated like everybody else because
Yeah.
I was there to learn like everybody else.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and there's nothing that really made me more special or better than anybody else. I feel
Mhm.
like people who think that they're inherently better than people,
Mhm.
I think that's kind of the first flaw or the first bad step down a bad road to go
Yeah.
down. Whereas like
Yeah.
everybody who is in that studio, there is something that they did better than me, and I can learn
Mhm.
from them, kind of thing. And I think that's an inherent attitude that I try to develop, just because, um, again, going back to that, like there were times, obviously, I feel like I have my strengths,
Mhm.
but I want to learn from other people's strengths, and I want people to feel comfortable if they want to learn from my strengths, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's again, life is too short to feel like you're better than everybody.
Yeah.
There,
That's
put that
a
on a t-shirt.
that's a great bumper sticker right there. So
Exactly. Exactly. Except
yeah.
when you're driving in Indiana, then I am better than driving the most expensive in Indiana. Just because people in Indiana don't know how to drive.
Yeah,
That's not because
I
I'm better than them.
yeah. No, I totally having lived there 5 years, I totally
Yeah,
agree.
absolutely.